Hello, every viewer, all 8 of you, and welcome to another review of a movie I've finally gotten around to reviewing Transformers Age of Extinction, or Transformers 4, as some of you may call it. The pros of this movie. The CGI is amazing, mostly. Like, once again, Michael Bay clearly shows that he is one of the best directors of CGI anything and integrating it into the world and so on. So that, once again, as these Transformers movies go, is really good. Also, the Transformers on both sides pretty much are now color-coded, so they're more differentiated when you're watching. Like, I'm one of the few people that wasn't particularly confused by who each Transformer was in the previous films, but that's because I owned all the toys and stuff of them, so I was like, oh, that's Grindor up there, not Blackout. So yeah, I was aware of that. But if you were one of the people that was just like, what the hell am I looking at? You can now tell better, and that is aided by they are now filmed better during fight scenes. The camera is pulled much further back for the most part, so when you're watching a fight scene, you can clearly see the two sides fighting each other. They've swapped out the cast in another kind of soft reboot fashion, and Mark Wahlberg is a much better protagonist than Shia LaBeouf. He's more proactive, he's more interesting for the most part. His characterization is a bit odd, like with him and the boyfriend character in this film, the two of them. I don't know, it's a bit odd sometimes between the two of them. So yeah, for the most part, the cast is much better in this film. The Humans vs. Transformers kind of plot line is done much better in this film than normal to the rest of them. Because normally they have that one character that's like, oh, we need to get rid of the Transformers, but they're literally just a side character that is there for all of 5 minutes. Whereas this time it is an actual plot point in the film. In that the humans are now hunting the Transformers down. And this plot point is almost to a fault of the film, which I'll get onto in the negatives. Also, there's so much less dumb humour in this film. It's almost gone. It is really to the betterment of the film, in my opinion. So I really hate the dumb humour in the other 3 Transformers films, so I was glad to see it gone in this one. And that's kind of swapped out with the film really trying to be about something. There are shots and scenes where you can tell this film is trying to be about something bigger, whether it's the Patriot Act, immigration, the NSA. It's trying really hard. It doesn't quite manage it, but at least it does try to be a much bigger film than the other ones, or be about more. And also some of that also helps make the villains better. Like, I think it's Kelsey Grammer as the human antagonist in this film. I'm not even sure if he knew he was in a Michael Bay Transformers film. His performance was so serious. Like, he had not a single dumb joke. And he was an actually good villain. And Lockdown is the other mate. He's the Transformer antagonist. He's interesting, and we'll get into his reasons why he's a villain. And he does kind of act as a neutral party. Well, not neutral, but a non-Decepticon, kind of a mercenary party, which was cool. China is also a more interesting location most of the time when they're not actually just in the city part, when they're in Kowloon and so, or I don't know if it's actually called that. It looks like the area from Black Ops, where the way that is structured is much more interesting than just Chicago or wherever. But yeah, Lockdown's reason for being evil is he's working for the Quintessons, or I assume it is, it's the Transformers creator, who you get a glance of one of their limbs at one point, and I love the Quintessons, so I'm like, yes, I am happy for the Quintessons to be in this movie. I will get onto some of the problems that creates later on, but I'm excited to see the Quintessons be in this series. Also, a big problem these films has had is that Optimus Prime is a complete psycho. But at least in this film, he has a reason for it. Like, yeah, the humans have kind of been dicks to him, so it's like, yeah, I can see why Optimus Prime may be a bit unhinged. But yeah, just quickly going back to Mark Wahlberg, I kind of forgot to say why he was much more proactive. He he fights the Transformers at some point. He has a Transformer gun and shoots it. I will get onto why that may be slightly ridiculous later on, but yeah. The final good point is that I could think of is there's a good setup for sequel. That may be a problem, which I'll get into, but at least it does. I am looking forward to the next one for once. Onto the cons now. It is way too long, like an hour too long. You could start like half an hour into this film, and I would be perfectly fine with it. It's just some of it drags and drags. It's just, oh, please stop. We don't. It in the end, it kind of takes away from the action later on, where you're kind of just waiting for it to finish. And like, there's a scene where a certain character I thought was being set up for a death scene, but then they kind of fall over and you're like, oh, they're gonna die, and then they just kind of get back up and keep fighting, and it's like, oh, and they don't die. So I'm like, okay. And some minor spoilers here. Galvatron and a couple of his Decepticons are in the movie, and they're wasted so bad. They're like, wow, they add nothing to this film. Galvatron, I don't even think he kills anyone. He may wreck a couple of cars, but he never like fights really. He has one fight scene with Optimus, which is so quick that I was just like, what? Wait, that's it? That's all we're getting from Galvatron? He's such a non-threat and seems so separated from Lockdown and so on. So that's a shame. And he doesn't really have any differentiated lieutenants. He has Stinger, and there's a two-headed Shockwave looking one, but that's it. And there's tons of them, like exact duplicates. They're drones, and come on, you're made to sell toys, make more, please, like more different Decepticons. And it kind of sucked, honestly. Like, at one point, I think it's Stanley Tucci, his character is like, oh, they were made to kill all of these Transformers. And they don't kill one, they get their asses handed to them. Like, the Decepticons suck in this film. And none of them really have a personality. Even Galvatron, he doesn't really have a personality other than being evil. Also, the Dinobots are also wasted. They don't talk. They transform twice. They're just there to show up at in the third act and be like, yeah, let's have some awesome scenes where Optimus is on the back of Grimlock. But even then, they aren't named, and that kind of sucked. And they don't really add a lot. Like, there's one scene where they're on a bridge, and they're meant to hold the bridge, and we don't get to see them do that. So that was a shame. Also, as I was saying earlier, the human versus Transformers thing is done so well that you hate the humans. Like, I want the Autobots or the Decepticons or someone to just wipe everyone out in this film. Like, they could all die, and I wouldn't care. Even Mark Wahlberg's family, it's like, sorry, you're part of the human race, you could go. And it doesn't help the film when later on the Autobots are like, we're leaving after we stop this. And Mark Wahlberg's like, no, and I was like, I wouldn't actually mind if they did. They probably should have. It also suffers from being the fourth film, so it feels kind of samey at this point. Like, it's the same plot and devices that, once again, there's someone that's going to make everything like Cybertron. So that kind of sucked to see, if I'm honest. And if this had been the second film, like if they'd swapped it around, so rather than the Battle of Chicago, it'd been the Battle at Mission City, that all this had happened after, this would be mind-blowing. This would be, like, amazing. Like, one of the, like, mind-blowing be good, but it's just kind of samey at this point. Also, the history of the universe still doesn't make any sense with the amount of random Transformer devices they throw in here, and it gets more convoluted and nonsensical with the introduction of the Transformers creators, or I hope they're quintessons, where it's like, in the first film, it was the Allspark that made them, but apparently now they have creators. So did they make the Allspark? I would say I'd like to see how that's explained, but I don't have any faith that it will be. And it does suck that we still don't get to see a whole Quintesson. So we only see the hand of one at one point, and I was like, that sucks. Also, the Autobots are still psychopathic. Like, as I said earlier, it is more understandable, but the Autobots are just kind of mean-spirited and sociopathic, and it's like, don't care about most of them. And once again, more new ones are introduced without any explanation why. I get why old ones have been culled off. And, like, Ratchet, spoiler alert, you see it in the trailer. He gets taken out, but it's like, so all the other ones got taken out, but where did these new ones come from? Did they arrive on Earth? And just, that sucks then. Bad time to arrive, but that Ratchet scene where he's killed, it came so close to being really like, oh my god, they killed Ratchet, but he gets his leg blown off, and rather than like having to crawl, he kind of hops around, so that was a bit ridiculous. And with the CGI, the Decepticon transformations just aren't interesting. They like turn into little orbs that reassemble, and that just doesn't look as good, I'm sorry, as just the transforming Transformers like, normally. And finally, this is another film where the sequel will be more interesting, but sadly this film isn't. It has that in common with Days of Future Past, so yeah, that is a shame to see this being a common trend now in blockbusters films, where it's like, we're just going to set up the next one, and oh well, this one, what a shame. But overall, would I recommend it? Yes, actually, this is probably this isn't probably, this is the best Transformers film. The only problem is, the only really big problem is length. I think some of this should have been trimmed, but yeah, I think all those people saying it's the worst Transformers movie and hasn't improved at all, I think they're being a bit biased against these films now. So yeah, I would actually recommend it. I don't think it's the best film of the year or anything. That goes to Dawn of Planet of the Apes so far. But for what it is, it's good. I enjoyed it. And yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it again, and I'd recommend you guys see it. So yeah, if you've seen the film, let me know what you thought of it, or 8 of you viewers. So the next film I review will possibly be Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, or I may review Fear Extraction Point next. I also have a small talk podcast thing I do with my friend Nick coming up, where we will be analysing most of the games of BioWare, or at least talking about them. So look forward to that. And until then, like, subscribe, do whatever the hell you want, and I'm trying to think of a Transformers pun to put at the end here. Roll out to all my other videos. Good God, It's the worst thing I've ever said.